The Fossores Chapter House is the world's first headquarters for Christian ministerial innovation, bringing preachers, leaders, and innovators together to collaborate on new liturgies, resources, and responses to the challenge of our times. This podcast explores the ever-changing era of perpetual upheaval, in which effective ministry requires constant imagination, creativity, and change. Well, hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the Chapter House podcast. My name is Dave McDonald, and I'm joined here with my good friend, Nathan Oates, who we have a strange way that we got to know each other. What was it now, like 16, 17 years ago?
Yeah, it was 16 years ago. You mean when I interviewed you to come work for me?
Yeah, which would have been great until it was a worship pastor job, and that was before you knew I couldn't sing. So
you were like, I'm way past that. I'm going to change the world.
Yeah, I don't know. I might have changed the world singing.
Maybe
that could happen. Yeah, I mean, if Tom Waits can do it, if Bob Dylan can do it, you don't need to sing to be a singer. Come on. Yeah.
Has he been a breakout Canadian singer?
Celine Dion. Hello.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes. But I mean, we don't want to claim her. I mean, she's great and all, but if you sneeze, she breaks her back. No, Brian Adams, Rush.
Forgot about Brian Adams.
The Guess Who, singing about those American women or an American woman. So yeah, we got one or two. Oh, and then Neil Young, king of the bad singers. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. Which I really, and Leonard Cohen. I mean, I have an unfair advantage here being from the Great White North, but
yeah. I would love to say McKinsey Brothers made the biggest impact on me of all of those.
That's it.
That's right. That's right. Strange brew, baby. Yeah. Take off, you hoser. All right, you're trying to get started, and I keep talking about Canadians.
But that's all right. That's all right. We have a sizable audience in Canada. The good people in the People's Republic of Canada need to know all the good things. So tell us where you're from and what you do, and then we'll get into your exciting book that's coming out.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks. I'm from Northern California, little small town outside of Sacramento. We've lived here for 17 years, which is crazy. It's the longest I've ever lived anywhere. But I kind of been back home. I grew up in the area, then went off to school in the Bay Area and then in Chicago, and worked in inner city church for 6 years after school.
Is that where you were in Chicago?
Wheaton.
Okay.
Yeah, Wheaton College and then the grad school there. And now we're back. So we got invited back here in 04, 4th of July, 04. We rolled into town to start a new church. And that's the community we're still pastoring now.
Oh, right on, man. Right on. And a great church and great people. And I really do always wonder, how would my life have turned out? And I consider you such a great friend. And then I always go, I wonder if we would have been great friends if I had to work for you. If you'd have been like, what is he doing? Oh my God, I'm going to kill this guy. That's possible. That's the great majority of people's experience with me.
Is that right? It's a risk.
I'm good from far.
Granted, yeah, I know. Yeah, it's like the 100-foot view of the restored car, right? Looks really good.
Yeah, that's it. As long as it doesn't need to run, then yeah.
That's right. I'm grateful, man. Super grateful for your friendship and your mentoring over the last several years as well. Yeah.
Well, it was really cool because you were in that year-long cohort that we did online with Scott and Amanda. That was a lot of fun, and then you were here when we first bought the chapter house, but we hadn't done anything to it yet. Had we even started demolition or anything? Or?
There was demolition happening. There were holes in the floor and see-through walls because they were stripped down to studs. And yeah, it was impressive. Your vision for that place is one of those times where you walk in, you're like, you hear the person's vision. You're like, they see stuff I can't see right now. It was freezing. You're not the only person who's
told me that about the place.
Yeah, you guys had a staff meeting you let me sit in on, and everybody was in there in their puff jackets and breathing out steam, and it was freezing cold.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's right. We were planning Holy Week, I think, for a couple years ago.
Yep.
Really cool. Well, you've got this new book coming out, which that's how we sort of reconnected. What 2018, something like that, didn't we? You were reaching out about Benedictine spirituality. So
you had done a book, right? You had done a book on like a kind of a Twitter version of the Rule of Saint Benedict, and right. So I was just reading everything I could on Benedict, and so yeah.
So we did a church survival guide. I read the Rule of Saint Benedict just like for kicks. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is how the monks don't kill each other. Like
That's
Mm-hmm.
it's how to get along when you put 50 dudes in one house. And of course, the early story of Christian monastic life is hilarious. You think of it as so idealized and so holy, but then you read about them, there being fist fights and drunken brawls and them going into the local towns and getting in trouble with the women. And you're like, oh, okay. So yeah, they needed a rule.
Yeah, that's right. It was a full-on disaster. I mean, somebody asked me a couple of days ago, they were trying to reconcile Benedict not restoring the church from within, not like it seems like his call to stability or his emphasis or value of stability would cause him to like try to support the church, but it was, I mean, it was just beyond repair. It was just a disaster. So he dies a year after the fall of Rome, and so his entire lifetime, the Roman Church at the time is just absolutely corrupt, and he intends to go there, but then he bails out his first year of college and decides not only is Rome falling, but the church is gone. So had to start from scratch in a sense.
Yeah. How did you get turned on to? So you got a grant from Lily, right? That's how. And then the grant was for a sabbatical where you do a writing project on Benedictine spirituality. Do I have those details right?
Yeah. The fascination started about a decade before that. I was in a retreat house, a lot like yours, and I was waiting for a ride, and I went up to the library and I pulled out this little red book, and I'd never heard of Benedict at the time. I'd never heard of the rule. And I skipped the prologue, which I shouldn't have because it's brilliant. And I read the first line of the first chapter, which is clearly there are 4 kinds of monks. And I was just like, that's the best first line. And so I read that first chapter. Like, I got to learn more about that. And so I just have been reading Benedictine spirituality for more than a decade. About a decade in, I realized I got to go see if this is still really happening anywhere. Because I'd read most of the major books that are currently out on Benedictine spirituality, but I really was like, do they do this at all anymore? And so, I reached out to a friend of mine who's a Dominican nun, and she connected me with a monastery in Italy.
Time out. How do you make friends with Dominican nuns? I mean, is there like a Dominican nun Tinder? I mean, how do you find them? I got lots of friends. I don't have any Dominican nun friends.
I know. It's such a great friendship. Oh, I love this lady. The how is one of my secrets is that I listen to Catholic radio all the time.
Great radio.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they actually talk about theology instead of like feel good today with my, little encouraging Jesus song. So, that was kind of harsh, but the alternative Christian stations are not very deep. So I hear this woman on the radio sharing her story of giving her life to Jesus and this full devotion of life. And I'm like, this is fantastic. She is articulating things in a way that I'm totally compelled by. And at the sign off at the end of the interview, they're like, from Loomis, California, Sister Maximilian Marie. That's like the town next to my town. And so I called the station. I said, can I get contact information? And she welcomed me into the house, not into the house because it's a cloistered house, but we met at the patio with 2 or 3 other nuns and my wife and my then like infants, and the nuns are holding to my baby boy. And we became really good friends. So we stayed in touch now for a long time. Yeah.
That's super cool.
She's part of the Dominican Sisters of Mary, Mother of the Eucharist. They're based, you know what? I saw her last time was when I visited you in Michigan. They're based in Ann Arbor.
Is she in Ann Arbor? Is it the Ann Arbor thing?
Yeah. Now she's in Texas because they opened up a place there. Anyway, it's one of the fastest growing orders in the United States. They're exploding.
The Dominican. I don't know anything about Dominicans. What are Dominicans?
They're teachers. Okay. It's the order of priests. No, the order of preachers, OP, if that's what the order of preachers. But the women are teachers, elementary school, high school teachers. So there's a Catholic school in Texas that she was the principal of a Catholic school in Sacramento when I met her.
Ronald Rollheiser, who I love, always has an OP behind his name. I'm like, what the heck? I don't know what OP stands for.
Order of Preachers. It's sweet.
Yeah,
except that the
cool.
women can't preach, which is
unfortunate. Yeah, that's it. I got that one wrong. You know,
Whoops.
that's not. Yeah, there you go. What else did he say? You know. Okay, so your Dominican friend turns you on to something in Italy. What was the thing in Italy?
Yeah. So she had a professor when she was in seminary, or whatever they call it, when she was being trained, Father Cassian Folsom. He, in his 50s or so, starts a new monastery in Norcia, which is the birthplace of Benedict. So he's been a Benedictine monk his whole life. And I don't know exactly how it happens, but they decide to start a new work in Norcia. And she reaches out to him. Can my friend come stay with you for a bit? I'm thinking a weekend. And he writes back, we're really busy. You could come, but only for about 3 weeks. I was like, oh, okay. We're talking level.
Yeah. So,
And what I didn't know, and what Maximilian Marie didn't really realize, is that these guys they're Roman Rite Benedictine monks. They think the Vatican II Council turned the church soft. It's like,
oh wow,
it's like jumping into a 100-mile like endurance race, or joining the Green Berets when you think you're going to go work out with your brother-in-law, for 45 minutes.
So these are like hardcore,
intense
Shiite
hardcore
Christians, like
yeah.
Okay.
But it was amazing because it's like 12 guys. About 8 of them are Americans in their 20s. Beautiful, devoted, totally inspiring guys. They welcomed me all the way in. I mean, just all the way out. So I'm praying with them 8 hours a day. We're getting up at 3 a.m. I'm working with them in the brewery in the afternoons, eating with them all their meals. I got to eat all my meals.
Wow.
The only thing I didn't do is sleep in their quarters. I slept in a storage container, which was the guest house. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So they're kind of a famous group because this earthquake blew up Norcia in 2017 and destroyed their historic building, this like multi-100-year-old building where they had started. And all of Norcia leaves, the power lines go down, the gas supply is destroyed, the roads are destroyed. Everybody leaves Norcia, Italy, except the Benedictine monks, because they have the stability. It is. And so several books have referenced this group because they're demonstrating the vow in such a dramatic way. Yeah. And when I was there, commerce was starting to come back in 2018. Slowly, people are starting to come back, and the monastery really was the foundation upon which the new city was being built.
How cool!
Fascinating to me. Yeah, the crossovers from that to what you and I do as pastors of churches. That's why I went there, because I wanted to see if there's something about their vow of stability could be translated to a non-monastic, non-Roman American context, like West Winds or like Emmaus.
Yeah. Okay. Well, time out for just a second, because I don't know that I've ever heard the term stability in connection with the Benedictines, because all I know about the Order of Benedict is what I read in the Rule of Benedict and the ancillary materials that were available as I was doing my own translation work. So what is a Benedictine, and what does it have to do with stability?
Okay. Yeah, great question. So Benedict, I don't know if he's the first to get credit for including as one of the major vows of his communities, the vow of stability. And initially, so, you think about monk vows and you think chastity, poverty, obedience, things like that. So Benedict's vows are stability, obedience, and ongoing conversion, which sometimes is translated ongoing death. It's this ongoing surrender. So So the vow of stability is his response to his major frustration with the church, which is that it's racked with consumerism. It's all about personal gratification.
Back in like 290 AD, it was all about
back in the late 6th century. Yeah. I know. See, Dave, that's what. When I read the rule, the first chapter for the first time, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know when this book was written. I finished reading the first chapter and I'm like, this guy understands American culture like nobody I've ever read.
Right.
Like, this guy has diagnosed the problem. What's his solution? Oh, who is this guy? What?
Yeah.
From the 6th century Italy?
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me. And so my hope is that he has a solution for the frustration that drove him to basically recreate Christian community at a level that has had a almost immeasurable impact on Western civilization today. So
the vow of stability is like a intellectual theological stability. Like, we're not going to change with the changing times, or is it like a rootedness? Like, hey, we're not going to move. We're not going to go from monastery to monastery, parish to parish.
Yeah. It's even more primal than that. It's you make a lifetime commitment to this community, these people, this place. Like, your life is going to live. You're going to live your life within the confines of this piece of property. Wow. And this I would say it's people, place, and I would say purpose. That's kind of my word, but basically you're vowing stability to the rule and to the abbot, which is your authority. And so on a super basic level, it's the commitment to remain. It's the commitment to not run away from relationships, from a place and the challenges inherent in that place, the specificity of the place and the way you bump up against it. You have to deal with the confines of this. Right. But then, of course, it goes miles deep in significance. Right. And ultimately, you read Benedictine theologians talking about this stability to the heart, stability to the presence of God. A story that I tell in the book is this monk called Moses the Black.
Historical figure, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's like a renegade bank robber, and he's a famous thief, and he hides amongst this community of hermits at one point. And he witnesses their life and he becomes fascinated with it. Later in his life, he returns and he says, I want to be a monk like you guys. He really struggles to surrender his life to the authority of others, but ultimately he does. And he becomes the abbot of this monastery, this early monastery. This is before Benedict even.
Yeah.
And he's famous because in the church fathers, in the desert fathers, there's a story about a pilgrim who goes to talk to Abbot the Black. Moses the Black, Abbot Moses the Black, and says, what do I do? Like, what's the direction you want to give to me for my life? And Moses's response is, go sit in your cell and your cell will teach you everything. You probably heard that. And I just think the guy's probably like, that was terrible. Like, my cell will teach me everything. But essentially, that idea of go remain in a place with a specific purpose, that just gets deepened to Thomas Merton tells that story, and he comes to the conclusion that God is his cell. Right. So he takes it from the literal confines of a room.
Yeah.
Where you have to begin, Dave. You have to begin. And that's the problem when we tell people, find your contentment in God. I think it's just too big for us. I just don't know that it has enough handles for us to really hold. I think we need the practical dynamics of a space, of a place, of a time, of authority, of a community, because it's in those places that you learn how to be stable. And of course, it's not ultimately about the room. Of course, it's ultimately about finding an eternal contentedness in the heart of God. But it's hard to start there. It's really hard to start there.
Sure, it's really abstract. Yeah, like right now, I'm standing in doing youth ministry temporarily at Westlands, just as we're rebuilding after COVID, and we got a guy who starts in after Labor Day, but for right now, it's me, and it's hilarious to be with teenagers again because they're so brash, where they're like, we don't know what you mean. I'm like, you need to give yourself wholly to God. Okay, did I do it? Is it done? Like, I don't know how to do that. So you're right. You need some handholds, like, pray every day for 15 minutes on your knees while reading the scripture, like something so concrete, not because that's the right way to do it. It's just because it's like training wheels, for your soul. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so after this earthquake or whatever it was that happened in 2017 to these guys, did they start rebuilding their old abbey, or did they start from scratch? And are they living in ruins and rubble? Like,
they're living in storage containers. Yeah, they're living in train car
Boxcars, yeah.
containers. Yeah, they moved up the hill to property that they owned somehow, and they started their community up there. And by the time I visited in 18, they had a chapter house, which looks like that's right, looks like a square with an open courtyard in the middle.
Yeah.
And so you got the refectory or the kitchen, you got the library, you got the place where they sleep, and you got the chapel on the other side. And they were building this old, like almost completely destroyed, just 4 walls, old Cappadocian chapel that they were restoring. And so I literally wrote the first part of the book in these caves behind this old, I mean, it was amazing. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome, dude. Yeah. So your book is about how to take all their stuff and translate it into a contemporary, Western American context. Yeah. We're trying to, yeah. And what'd you find? Like, how many times did you want to get in the time machine and go backwards? Or how many times did you want to move to Italy? Or how many times do you want to set fire to your church or yourself and start all over?
Yeah. I mean, I have so much to say about that. I'll try to do a few things quickly. One, personally, I remember a really deep personal struggle early teenage years. I became a Christian. My family wasn't a Christian. I was actually believing people when they said you should give your life to Jesus.
Yeah.
He should be the most important thing in your life.
Yeah.
You should do whatever he says. I didn't have the unfortunate sometimes context of a pretty milquetoast, watered down Christian community. And this is why I bring that up. I think I was in a Nazarene context, which I still am in, but if I had been in a Roman context, and if I had the possibility of monastic life held up to me as an option,
you would have taken it, you think?
I think I might have taken it. I mean, so that was running through my head while I was there. Like, wow, there's something so pure about this. It's so attractive to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe another thought that was in conflict and tension with that was that I went there just ready to ask, how do we do this where I am?
Yeah.
And without exception, you can't.
Really? They were just like, sorry, dude.
Can't do it. You can't do it. And some of them.
Wait, like, how do we do? What is the part that you can't do? I mean, because you as a human, like if it's people, place, purpose, like you as a human can make that decision anywhere. Maybe you can't start a community because there's so many people in your town that are going to move in and out. But you as an individual can totally commit to people, place, purpose.
Yeah. I believe that there's stuff we can learn from what they're doing. In other words, I believe we can, but I think it's important that I don't just appropriate their experience and say, we can just totally Westernize this, because there's some fundamental challenges. And the main reason that I was given for why we can't just do this in a non-cloistered or a dispersed Western Protestant context, this is fascinating to me, is because we don't obey anyone. You don't obey anyone.
Guilty. I'm terrible for that. I try. I really try. I really do. I really do. I'm a disobedient puppy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
You Protestants, if you don't like something, you Protestants start your own thing. Your parishioners don't obey you. Yeah, we protest. I don't even invite the people in my church to obey me. I'm not comfortable with that language. But,
sure.
To be fair, they would say, this is and others have reflected on this. There's an author named Joan Chittister, and she just loves Benedictine spirituality. And she says, the struggle is, how do I learn from something that doesn't want to be taught, that only joined? It's good. Yeah. And it reminds me of like real Christianity. In other words, Jesus says, if you're my disciples, you will obey my teachings, and then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. In other words, there's a limit to which you can learn Christianity as an observer. You just have to jump in. You got to jump off the cliff and get into the water. And then you know the real thing. And so there was that tension that I was experiencing in Norwich. It was like, hey, you can observe like we're a museum or something, but you really won't get this until you understand the level of devotion that we have to the church, to Jesus, to Jesus's mother. Yeah. So
because you can't learn to ride a bike by watching a YouTube video. You gotta sit on the seat and pedal the pedals and pick yourself up when you fall over. What was the rhythm?
Let me add this.
Oh, go ahead.
Let me just add this real quick, because I don't want to leave people with like, oh, so it's pointless. This helped me. What the church is to the culture, or what the church can be to the culture, the monastery can be to the church. In other words, the call on the church, as I understand it, is to be a light on the hill. Sometimes people reach the end of their rope and they call the church. They don't have any other place to go. Some sort of thing says they might be able to help me. They're a model for what it could be. And so the church can reflect. You see what I'm saying? And in a similar way,
that's right at the center of the chapter houses. I was like, how do we bring in and I mean, pastors spend so much time peddling the gospel and never get to experience it. You know, Jesus promises abundant life, meaningful friendship, peer-to-peer connection, ongoing discipleship and maturation, and we never get it because we're so busy slinging it. So the chapter house, what a great way to say it. Yeah,
it's a great point. It's a great point. So you were asking another question.
Oh, I was just asking about you got up with them at 3 a.m. Is it like 3, 6, 9, 12, 3, 6, 9, 12? Like, is it they're following? Is it the daily hours?
Yeah, exactly as it's written in the rule. It was remarkable. The whole thing's in Latin. I don't speak Latin, so there's so much confusion the first few days. Plus, I was super hungry because they almost never eat, and I'm really uncomfortable and tired because I'm not sleeping. In fact, it's kind of funny. I show up after hiking for 4 days to the monastery. I take this old path to the monastery.
You could hike for 4 days to get there?
Yeah, it was fantastic. That's fantastic.
Awesome.
I didn't have to, but I did. I was like trying to quiet my mind. My family and I were on vacation in Italy for a month. Then I waved goodbye to them, and then I started walking. And so I arrived hungry. And the brother who picked me up, and he's like, "Hey, are you hungry? Because today's a fasting day." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then he goes, "You know what? Tomorrow's a fasting day too."
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
So I was uncomfortable, but yeah, they essentially pray 8 hours a day. If you sum it all up, if you add it all up, there's 8 hours of prayer and reading a day. There's 8 hours of work a day, and there's 8 hours or so of sleep a day. So, but it's like this. It's like this. You pray, you work, you pray, you work, you pray, you work, and the lines get blended, and work becomes a continuation of the prayer. Sometimes I was doing really menial work, like putting caps on bottles of beer with a clamper thing, and they would give me a prayer to pray. Pray this prayer while you work. And what I started to recognize was that really the prayer was the main work. And we would take a break from praying to go garden. We'd take a break from praying to go, take a delivery of beer to someplace. It was flipped. I say to my staff, why don't we take a break from our meeting and pray for a minute?
Pray. Yeah.
It just flipped.
Yeah. And so what kind of prayers are they? I mean, are you praying, like, are they prayers of adoration? Are they prayers of repentance? Are they prayers of, discernment? I mean, or is all the above?
All of the above, but mostly the Psalms. They pray the whole Psalter every week. So they're praying 150 Psalms a week.
Ooh.
And then there's all kinds of other prayers. They're praying scripture.
Yeah.
They're praying. There's other songs that they're singing.
Yeah.
And it's not extemporaneous. There is silence for confession. But they're praying the Psalms. Yeah. And it's all delineated in the rule of Saint Benedict, as you probably remember, like what Psalms to pray at what time.
Yep.
It's all spelled out. So there's not a lot of flexibility, which really grinds against kind of a Protestant spirituality of new and different and innovative.
Yeah.
None of that.
Yeah. Now, what are they? Are they judgy? I mean, like, I go, if you're committing yourself to that whole way of life, clearly a part of it is in opposition to the flavor of the church, the changing, shifting stands of the culture and the church's response to culture. But then you've also got this problem where, like, most of the people in the New Testament would not have chosen for or espoused that life. So how are they judgy? And if so, how judgy do they get? Like, are they judging the Apostle Paul because he wouldn't do it in that? They, or are they only judging like a little bit or not at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. Ultimately, I don't know. I'm sure there's every kind of relational conflict you can imagine within the community. But I experienced them to be remarkably merciful and patient and crazy mature. I mean, I'm hanging out all day with guys in their 20s.
Yeah,
and
right.
Guys in their 20s in my town, they're delivering pizza. I mean, they don't know what they're doing with their life yet.
Yeah.
And I'm used to that level of, like, it's all about me. I'm just going to go live in a van for a while and see national parks. These guys are, like, deeply devoted. I felt authentically challenged spiritually just by the character of these men. So
what would a challenge feel like? Like, would they would make a suggestion to you, or you just would see how they respond to ardor or difficulty, and you go, "Oh, I'm not like that."
It's mostly the latter. It's mostly just what I observed in the way they loved each other. But it was also direct challenges. Like, I mentioned at some point being tired because of being uncomfortable or something. I made some comment that evoked this response from the brother. He said, I didn't feel like it was judgmental. He was very passionate guy, very intense guy. So, but I can go with that. I'm fine with that. But basically what he said to me is, comfort's overrated. Comfort's not healthy for the soul. And I was like, wow, that is just so clear. And he just believes it. So we were talking about chastity and fasting. And I mean, this guy had a girlfriend in college and now he's a monk. Right. And so, and it's like, there was only this sense that what I have with Jesus is so much better. Like, I'll take discomfort all day long. One monk told me, I trained to be a priest. I pastored a parish in Texas for a few years. The consumerism in the church was very difficult for me. I decided I couldn't do it anymore. I needed to either become a Marine or a monk. I was like, wow. And he said, so I had to surrender a lot of things, including the desire to win souls. Oh man.
Wow.
Like, I know that's a level of surrender. So, and this guy's like counting the cost. And he said, this is the way to the heart of God that is the fastest and the most thorough. So I've given myself to this. I'm just going to disappear here.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So in that sense, Dave, I just felt like I was talking to, how like in the early Star Wars movies, they barely can even handle the Force. They have no idea. They're like super clumsy with it. And then you start to see like the old Jedi masters and they can do all kinds of, I felt like that. I felt like I have a taste of what spiritual power is, but these guys are living in this like depth of communion with God that frankly was it was humbling, like lower your head, humbling. Yeah. So it's totally fascinating and totally, I mean, I would put it in like the top 3 life-changing experiences for me.
Yeah. It sounds incredible.
Short time.
Well, what about outside of the monastery? I mean, did you visit any other Benedictine communities outside of that one? Are there any? I mean, are there?
Yeah, they're all over the place. There's several in Northern California, and they vary quite a bit. Some of them are the one connected to the publishing house that's doing the book. It's called Paraclete Press, and they're part of the Community of Jesus in Cape Cod, and that's a community of men and women. Some are married and some aren't. I don't know much about it, except that there's a lot of variety in both the level of austerity in Benedictine communities. As I said, I went to kind of like the apparently one of the more hardcore, but there's all sorts. And Benedict he's known for several things. One of them is that he is so accommodating, and this is a new dynamic in rules. Like the Augustine rule is not very accommodating. The rule of Basil is not very accommodating. In other words, Benedict will say, hey, it's winter. Let them have another shirt. Or you're sick. You can eat meat because you're sick. Just eat some meat. Or sleep in because you're older. I mean, it seems really simple to us, but apparently it's sort of like, whoa, he was really, so they see in Benedict a real appreciation for the humanity of humans, not just this, I'm living on top of a pole in the desert hermit kind of thing, though he was remarkable. But then the rule is written for beginners, according to Benedict. This is a little rule for beginners, he says.
But I was struck by it, just how practical it is. Like, it's like, you should sleep this much. You should be in these rooms. If you have this disagreement, this is how you should settle it. And like, it was so invasive in one sense, for like this, eat like this, sleep like this. But in another sense, it was really, it was like giving rules to toddlers. That's how I thought of it. It was like, you guys are going to make each other mad. So when it happens, you go to your corner and you go to your corner, and pray till God takes the hate away. Or it was just,
I agree. It's remarkable. Yeah. And the icon, hold on a sec. Well, maybe I can get it off the wall.
This is amazing, right? Right now, Nathan is trying to disassemble his office and hold it up to the camera.
I'm trying to get the icon off the wall. So icons of Benedict always have the raven, right?
Oh, really?
And they always have the raven. And the raven, he's got bread in his mouth. And that goes back to this legend that Pope Gregory the Great tells in a book that he writes on Benedict. It's the only source of biographical information on Benedict. And this gets to your point here in a second.
Yeah.
But the first guys who gather around Benedict, they need remedial teaching. So they try to poison him because he's so devoted. They try to poison him, and they poison the bread and the chalice in the Eucharist. And the raven comes in and snags the bread and takes it away. And then when Benedict blesses the chalice explodes.
That's
and this
awesome.
is depicted in art. Yeah. And so, so the reason I tell you that story is because he's under assault his whole life.
Yeah.
And so he spells it out. Don't sleep with your knife on. Like really basic toddler kind of instruction. Yeah. Great observation.
That's classic. So what did you, when you clearly you had some preconceived ideas going into it. And of course you're going to find all kinds of stuff that sides in your confirmation bias, but what did you find that you didn't expect? Like where you went, oh, I was wrong about this, or I didn't even consider this.
Yeah. I didn't think they would be like to the letter on this rule that's 1,500 years old.
Yeah, like it surprises me that they're still reading those Psalms at those times. That's crazy.
Yeah. Like there would be at one point at the end of the week, these two guys would come out into the middle of the floor. They would kneel down. They would say this prayer for them. And the first time I saw it, I said, I think that, it's all in Latin, so I can get it. I think they're the new kitchen workers, because in the rule, they pray for the people who served all week. You just take it 1 week at a time. And the prayer is, thank you for the opportunity to serve. And then you pray for the people coming in. Help me not to be prideful or resentful as I serve others. I'm like, I wonder if that's that like kitchen server prayer. And I asked a guy afterwards, and he said, yeah. So in other words, I know the rule better than I know the real thing.
Yeah.
They were doing the rule. They were like living it out. Oh,
that's cool. I was just going to say, like, how cool. I love the idea that I don't want to be prideful or resentful while serving others. And I go, well, none of us want to be resentful, but what a great mark to recognize that I can often be quite proud of all the crappy things I'm doing to serve Jesus,
Yeah. I think one of the biggest discoveries, most of the biggest discoveries were personal. I mean, I just got wrecked. I wept when I left. I cried for a long time. I had a really hard time praying there, especially the first few days. I was like, what's the point of all this prayer? I don't know who else to pray for. I've interceded for everybody I can imagine. And then, 45 minutes later, we got to pray again for an hour. And I was confessing this to one of the priests there, who's also a monk. And he said, your problem is, you don't adore God.
Oh,
The solution to your problem is adoration. He's like, we don't need to intercede all day long. We don't need to repeat our intercessions every 2 hours with God. He knows our needs, but we can never run out of adoration. And
wow.
you have a lot of adoration in your prayer. And he was exactly right. So kind, so gentle.
Yeah.
The best pastoral care I've ever received, Dave. I was like, oh, it just cut me. It just absolutely cut me. Like, how did I arrive here? How did I get to, like, I pray every day, but I pray basically for wisdom to fix problems.
Right.
And there's not enough. There's very little adoration in my life. And then he said, the more adoration, the greater the purity, and the greater the purity, the more powerful the intercession. So he like did this circle with the thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are just, it's like you spend your whole life with
Yeah, right. By the time I'm 170, I've attained the spiritual maturity that they've got at 29. What about laughter? I mean, I realize going there to be happy is not the point, but I mean, are they happy? Are they joyful? Do they tease each other? Do they laugh together? I mean,
yeah. There was this one monk, we would eat together, and you eat in a room and you're all facing each other. And there's somebody reading. You eat in silence, but somebody reads an old book, like a saint or some writer that they respect. So it's not just clank. It's like somebody's talking because they're reading. And this one guy, he just found a lot of things really funny. So he would hear something that had been read and everybody's sort of eating, and he'd go, he'd be like, hey, does anybody else think this is funny? It was so funny. So I would be in the chapel before they processed in through a side door, and I would hear them laughing, So Benedict's not big on laughter in his chapter 7, which is about humility, but I think it's that bombastic sort of self-centered, look at me kind of thing. It's because they're so joyful. At least that was my experience. I just saw different personalities. I saw very serious guys, and I saw some real jokesters. You get a kick out of this. They were cutting down trees to build this other building, and so they had like huge chainsaws. They had helmets with big visors on them. They had gloves, but they're still in their habits. And so they devised this belt that goes between their legs, hikes up their habit. So you basically make these like, I don't know, these shorts out of your shirt. That was so funny. And they had a lot
to gird up their loins for,
You were girding up the loins. Yeah, you don't get that in the chainsaw.
Oh man. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I was wondering about all that, like how they like if there's a particular sense of humor, if like because you go if you're really not conversing a ton, and clearly when you're in that mode, it's not like you're going to be teasing your friends like, oh, here's fat monk taking another helping of dinner or something, or so I wondered what the measure was of their humor. What about the beer? I mean, is that they sell the beer? Is that the thing? Is that and so that's what gives them their own money? They don't receive money from the Vatican or from the organization or anything. Like it's all like it's zero. It's a zero or whatever. It's profitable. It's a business.
I don't know for sure. I don't know that it's profitable. It's a big part of their sustenance, but they also have a significant donor base. But I didn't get the sense that Rome was really backing them financially. And there was even a bit of a tension that I perceived with the diocesan bishop. So I don't know that I don't remember exactly the structure of the polity, but I think they kind of exist outside of the formal structure, though they do submit to, they submit to the Pope. But most
unless the Pope is wrong,
kind of
or unless the Pope is flaky, or unless the Pope
Yeah.
puts out a Vatican III council, and that's
That's
funny.
right. There was
funny.
there was a bit of that. Nobody said anything, but the content that I was hearing read made me realize they aren't real high on the Pope right now. So
Which and this is a really base observation. So forgive me in advance, but I do think there is something to obedience, that the hardest things to obey are the things that we disagree with, so
exactly
easy. If I sign up to go and live in a monastery where I kind of know the values, I know then I've made all my big obedience leaps at once. But then when the person over me, the Pope, whoever, tells me to do something and I don't want to do it, that's a really hard test of obedience, which they're so far beyond us. And what, in that category, it seems silly to bring it up, but it is also quite comical to go.
Yeah. I mean, it's instructive too. I mean, the reason we make a vow is because we anticipate this is going to be really difficult. Like that's the reason we make a wedding vow, because it's basically you're forecasting. I recognize this is going to be a hard thing for me to keep, to remain faithful for my whole life and to love my whole life. And so we anticipate that. And so we preempt the whole agreement with a vow.
Yeah.
And, I've made 3 vows. You've made 3 vows, a marriage vow, a baptismal vow, and we're both ordained. And so in that sense, that same principle carries over. It doesn't mean you're a puppet or that you are a doormat, but you still are called to submit.
Yeah.
And so there is a little bit of crossover, which I think is helpful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even I've been thinking a lot about, you'll forgive me, I forget the reference, but having done all that you can stand. I go, that's been my word from God for David for this last 2 years. Is like, Lord, I don't know what else to do. We stand. I don't know what else to do. You don't quit. I'm not sure I should keep doing ABC. Don't quit. Well, I'm not sure if they're producing the results that I want. Don't quit. You just hold fast. Everybody else is going to do whatever they're else going to do, but that's not on you, man. You got to stick to it. And I keep thinking, like this last week when I was praying, and this sounds self-aggrandizing. I certainly don't mean it that way. This was just really comforting for me of an image of a what do you call it? Like a big pylon, like when they build a dock, they have the big dock pilings. So I have this image in prayer that a dock had washed away and all of the pilings had washed away and there's a crazy storm. And the Lord said, you see that piling? That's got to be you. That's got to be you. Mm-hmm. So everybody else does whatever they're going to do, gets washed away. You got to stand. And so I just kept thinking about your book. And I'm very eager to read it. I mean, it comes out in a couple of weeks, but just that whole idea of the stability that you're just going to be this unwavering person of faith. Oh boy, that's good for me right now. I need that injection into my spirit.
It makes me think of Paul saying, "I've learned the secret of being content in all circumstances."
Yeah,
right. You remember that. And my question to him is, how'd you learn that, Paul? How'd you learn that secret?
Right.
And the answer is what the Spirit's telling you. Paul stayed. Paul endured.
Yeah.
And that's essentially the thesis of the book, which is that if you remain in this current, specific, unique to David McDonald challenge, if you embrace the value and then you practice stability, the movement that is birthed out of this season of remaining, of being that pillar, and that movement will heal, David. That movement will make a difference in the world. It's the roaches scattering when the light turns on kind of movement that is happening all around us in our culture. It just does more harm, especially when it's done in the name of Jesus. There's no depth to it. There's no wisdom there. There's no 2, 3, 10 years of enduring that is now forming that. It's the difference between a wanderer and a missionary. And you're going to come out of this season. At some point, you will move. At some point, the direction will be now go into the world. And but if your movement is birthed out of not moving, when the storm hit and enduring the storm, that's what I'm trying to argue in this book is, man, if you transplant a tree 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times, it's not going to bear any fruit. But if you let that thing if you nurture it and you protect it and it stays,
The
it
roots are
becomes
deep.
a harbor. Yep.
Well, I remember, when the pandemic first hit, I really crudely divided ministers and Christians to a lesser extent, but, really clergy into two categories, those who kind of went, oh, well, and those who kind of went, game on. This is when our churches need us. This is when our people need us. We are going to do everything we can to, be grabbing hold of everybody and trying to pull them in tight together. And of course, that was tricky to do. But I was really surprised at how many people were like, "Oh well, guess it's vacation time," or "Can't do anything about it." There was so much hand throwing up that I was like, "Hey, well, what's going on, Holmes? Like that doesn't feel okay." And then of course that gave me a whole bunch of new things to repent about, which was exciting. That's what I'm always looking for.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, what about?
I remember that because it was only going to be 2 weeks, right? It was just going to be maybe 2-3 weeks. So let's just take a break.
Yeah. We're tired anyway. What about big words to the church? Like if you go, oh, I wanted to come back to the beer, which we can. It's just because I was just curious. Oh, I was just curious. Like, do they drink it? Is that what they drink at meals? Like, or do they abstain? Are they? Yeah. You said it was a big part of their sustenance. Pardon me.
Mm-hmm. Sustenance. Yeah, they sell it here in the United States as well. It's called Birra Nursia. Birra. Nursia is the old name for Norcia, Italy, the town where they are. And they just do two. They do like a blonde, and then they do this dark, like Belgian ale, I guess, or Belgian something that.
Well, I'm gonna go.
I know nothing about this stuff.
No, I'm gonna go. Well, you're Nazarene. You're not allowed. I'm gonna go buy one.
I know.
And put it on the shelf. We have this shelf at the chapter house where all the Fossorians who publish books put them on the shelf. And your waymarking book is on there, which people keep grabbing it. And I just gave it to somebody else. They got a young teenager and they're trying to figure out, how to. But when Angela came here to stay at the house, she was like, "Hey, that's our book." I was like, "I know, Nathan's
so cool."
So anyway, well, but next to your book on stability, I'll put some of this beer if I can find it, because that's just.
I'd love to send you one. Yeah.
Yeah, a cool story. Okay, so big mention, big picture. Pardon me. If you were to sort of proclaim something to the church out of all this, what would you want us to know?
Yeah, that's a great question. That is the question. Let me say two things. I offer 4 like calls to action at the end of the book. So I'll mention one of the 4, and then I'll mention the one that got edited out. A 5th that got edited out, which I actually really like. Okay, so the first I would mention is that the way I put it in the book is we need to recognize the fruit, and we need to honor the root. We need to honor the root that leads to the fruit, and that means that in my view, instead of just telling the happy ever after ending of the story and having that person stand up and here's the healing story and here's the wonderful testimony of deliverance, and here we gotta like open it up way more transparently and say, here's the sacrifice, here's the struggling teenager that's about to toss the whole thing, and we need to just be more open, because that's part of the process that actually leads to the triumphant ending that we're all really good at telling those stories. We love hearing those stories. And I don't think we stop telling those stories. I think we include the other stories too. Because without the fullness of the process in view, the ultimate victory is cheapened. It's just cheapened. And so
to clarify, you'd say like we need to tell sort of pre-testimonies like, "Hey, I'm Bob. I'm going through a brutal time right now. Just don't know where things are going. I'm not sure God's here. I feel like quitting. Pray for me. Pray with me." Those kind of stories. But before there's ever a eucatastrophe at the end.
Yep.
Good moment.
And it's super risky. I've been doing this for a few years, and my staff is like, "Dude, I don't know if this is a good time for that one," because it can feel discouraging, and it can feel like people are always leaving. And you keep telling us that people are leaving, or it can feel like people that are really looked up to with admiration are actually really having a hard time. So it's risky.
Sure.
This is
Yeah,
risky. But man, I just don't have the time or the interest in kind of a shiny veneer, kind of saccharine, everything's happy and I'm wealthy and blessed because of Jesus. I can't do that. So, so that's one thing I would call the church.
I can't do it when it feels cheap or manufactured. I can't do it when it feels trite. I mean, if somebody says, I'm blessed because of Jesus, but they grew up in a very wealthy home and their dad gave them a job out of college, and that testimony feels like, well, okay,
Right. Yeah. So that's one thing I would say to the church, especially to leaders, is all the hard, all the sacrifice, all the failures,
pain,
part of the process. Yeah, part of the process, and it's part of what leads to the fruit. Most of us will never see the fruit. Most of the Old Testament didn't see the fruit. We may not see the ultimate fruit of our efforts, but we're definitely not going to see any fruit if we handicap the very work that's supposed to bear fruit, which is to cheapen the whole thing down to 3 steps to a happy marriage. And I go from devastated to happy in a week, so that's one thing. And then the other thing that got edited out because they felt like the publishers felt like it was a little bit too focused on the church. But I would say this, if people are, in leadership or involved in church, my conviction is we need to embrace worship as a rhythm, as a way of life, not as an event. Because this worship as event, think worship concert, think conference. They have their place. But it's like, just like revivalism formed the church in the 19th century, worship conferences are shaping the church in our era. And we don't approach worship as a way of life anymore. We approach worship as, I'm going to go to that concert. I'm going to go drive to that church where they have this certain gift everybody's receiving, or I'm going to go to that place where they have this amazing speaker. It becomes event driven, which means when the event's off, now what? Where am I left? I'm just searching for another event to go get another charge. And it's this start, stop. Christian worship is a way of life. It's a rhythm. I do it. This is the way I live. And if the church could embrace this liturgy, whether it's formal or informal, the way of life at West Winds includes a lot of creativity and change. It doesn't mean I'm not calling for a lack of change. I'm calling for an intentional embracing of a rhythm. This is the way we do it, whether we feel like it or not. You do this physically and you're working out. It's not like event driven. It's not episodic. You don't power lift episodically. You power lift rhythmically. You do this as a routine. And that's the kind of spirituality that bears fruit in the end.
Rhythm is a really good word for it, because oftentimes when people say you do it whether you feel like it or not, what they're saying is discipline, which discipline does bear fruit, but rhythm certainly has rhythm feels a lot less controlling, feels a lot less top down. That's good language. I'll tell you because I like events. I like big events. I mean, I'm critical of them too, but I still enjoy them. And of course, so much of what is important to me as a creative is to design experiences for people and for myself. But I'm always surprised at how much I have to talk about and model the rhythm of prayer and scripture, and because people don't pick it up osmotically. They don't pick it up by accident. But it's weird because it's hard to show it to them. I mean, unless they're going to stand shoulder to shoulder with me. I mean, I don't open my Bible once a day. I'm in and out of 50 Bibles all day, every day. I don't pray once a day. I'm frequently in prayer. I don't sing on Sundays. I sing daily, humming or lifting or extolling God, and and that's just my non-charismatic life, But nobody sees that because they're not. They can't be with you 24/7. But what is cool is my children have seen it. And so I had a really sweet experience with my daughter the other day where we'd been playing ping pong and horsing around, having fun. Then she wanted me to teach her how to play chess. And then I'm just sitting there zoned out on the couch, like 9 o'clock at night, playing on my phone. And I look over and she's got her Bible out and she's got her markers and she crayons. She's like, Dad, I need help with Matthew. And I was like, what is happening right now? This is amazing. Because it wasn't Bible time. It was just home time. And that was so cool. But that's such a huge gap from what most Christian people are going to experience without a model of maturity or seeing that rhythm. So,
you can't Instagram your rhythms very well. They're just not that exciting because you do them all the time. So our whole culture has leaned so far towards these big dramatic events.
Yeah.
And so now we're dropping gift certificates from helicopters at Easter services, and we're giving away, Volkswagens and stuff like that. I was like, how did we arrive here? How did we arrive here?
Right.
Apparently the rhythm has either been so profoundly impotent that we've abandoned it, or we never really engaged in one. And it's always been
or both. I mean, because I'll tell you the times where we've tried to structure or force the rhythm, how do we as a organization, how do we as a church, put this rhythm out there for people to kind of have the training wheels? I would definitely say it's impotent. People try it and they go, it doesn't feel like it's working. I'm not sure. I mean, at least if I go to the gym and I do something, I know I'm not going to have a 6-pack at the end of the day, but I'll also be covered in sweat. I'll have the endorphin rush. I'll have the adrenal push. Like I'll know something happened. But of course, praying in the daily hours, you don't feel like something happened. You just feel bored and stupid because the delay is so long. But all right. When's the book come out?
It's supposed to come out September 7th, but I got a call yesterday that there's so few truckers coming across the country that their whole process is delayed. So it'll be out in September. It'll be out in September. You can buy it at nathanoates.com, which is my website. You can also get it on Barnes & Noble or Amazon or anything like that if you want to support the smaller industries in our country. But that's when it comes out.
Cool T-shirt? How do I get your cool T-shirt? Because that thing is amazing.
I can send you I can send you that.
Yeah, well, let me buy it. I mean, you can send one to somebody who can't afford a shirt. I can buy a shirt. So, but
okay. You can get them at nathanoates.com. You can get a shirt there. Later, like in January, I'm planning for people who are interested in going into this a little bit. I'm going to do 100 days with Benedict, like a class from Epiphany through Lent, where we read the rule together and we spend like an intentional few months trying to learn how to be shaped by this
and we're going to do your
river
course
of spirituality.
We're going to do your course with the chapter house online too, with our online school that we're opening.
Cool.
Yeah.
All
right.
Stuff. Yeah.
Well, much love, brother.
Good, brother.
Thank you. And
thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. It's exciting. I'm 100% in your corner. I can't wait. It's going to be cool. Yeah. All right. Thanks everybody for watching us.